I thought I knew the answer to this question, but it's way simpler than anything I could have imagined. So, why so many remakes, reboots, reimaginings of these old TV shows and movies that, especially me as a millennial, why have they been produced over and over and over again? Why not just create new stories, new movies, new TV shows? And I think what a lot of people have thought, including myself for a long time, was that like Hollywood is just devoid of ideas, you know? And I started to push back against that a little bit because I remember uh, a while ago I made a series of videos where I talked about, the blacklist that exists. The blacklist is you can even look this up. You can Google it, where it's the best unmade screenplays for each year. And there's some really, really interesting movies that, I think would be really great if they just had a director and some producers and just some real energy from any of the major studios behind any of these stories. But no, they're redoing so many other things, you know what I mean? And like, especially with these TV shows that are being rebooted, Scrubs, Malcolm in the Middle. I read about they're bringing King of the Hill back, and even you can go back a few years and how they brought back Roseanne, and so it's like, why? Is it really, they just don't have any ideas? I don't think that's the case. In fact, it's just money. It has everything to do with money, which I don't know why I never thought of this before, because Hollywood is in the business of making money. They're really not in the business of telling stories. They haven't been in that business for a very, very long time now. And think about it. Millennials don't have very many kids. Gen Z is broke. Gen Alpha is not even there yet. So what are they doing? They are appealing to people who do have the money, and that is people like me, 40 something year olds with steady jobs, steady careers, and okay, how can we, make something and then generate, ad revenue from the different companies? Okay, so we have to make Roseanne again and then have whatever companies, advertise on these shows and then we're going to sell to them. Back when we were kids, everything was sold to us. And even as we were growing older, they were still like, trying to, get as much out of us as possible, actually getting as much out of our parents as possible because they were marketing to us and the generations before. But going forward, like they don't have money. They really, really don't. And um, it's too bad because we have great memories. I mean, when it comes to nostalgia, when it comes to even like collectibles, like, small figurines or, um, you know, toys that they just kind of like, repackaged them and sold them again. And now, you find them at these conventions and whatnot. And who's going to buy those things? Not kids, because they don't understand it. They don't know anything about Thundercats or G.I. Joe or anything like that. I mean, if you can even go to Netflix and there is a really interesting series called The Toys That Made Us, where they talk about G.I. Joe and Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles. What are those shows and toys that are marketed towards, the kids nowadays? You can't really, they might still exist in some way, shape, or form, but they're not as present as the ones that we grew up with. And it's just kind of sad, you know what I mean? Because it's like for somebody like me, and I'm not the only one, I'm like starving for new stories. I'm like starving for new heroes and, new things that kind of contribute to pop culture. And they don't have that anymore. The kids these days, they're looking at, Kai Cenat, and God bless you, Kai. You're hustling and working your ass off, and you're achieving incredible amount of success. Awesome, but it doesn't have the same impact as Saved by the Bell. You know, it doesn't have the same impact as Friends. Even though I wasn't a big fan, it was definitely in the zeitgeist. Nothing like that exists anymore. I'm still an optimist, and I'm hoping for like something will happen and it'll like upswing in this kind of down period of pop culture. But who knows? Maybe it'll change completely into something I didn't really even think about. So only time will tell. Anyways, what about you guys? Let me know what your thoughts in the comments below. Smash that like button, give me a follow, and I'll see you guys next time.